We who cook with Dino are the luckiest people in the world.
Okay, we are here once again with Dino. We have not had a Dino segment in a while, and we are anxious to talk to Dino because now his cookbook is officially out. And the cookbook, in case for those who are if you're a new listener, the cookbook is called Alternative Vegan. And so, Dino, tell us, how has everything been going with the cookbook?
It's been going absolutely wonderfully. I started a blog on Bob's suggestion. The address for that is altveg, altveg.blogspot.com. And I'm keeping the thing updated with some of my daily experiences, some of the stuff I'm cooking, some of the stuff that's going on in my life. Sort of, if you just want to keep up with me, it's all on there.
All right. We'll be sure to put that in the show notes.
Excellent.
Definitely. That's also the easiest way for the listeners to email me questions or comments. If you just leave a comment on any of the entries, it gets straight to my email that I have open at all times.
That's true. You're always on the computer.
I'm always on the forums, but if you're not on the forums and you still want to send me a question, you can do it.
True.
And I've been getting some questions about, whenever certain people call me, such as my mother or my friends or, family, they want to know how the book is doing, and I sort of wanted to address that, if I may.
Of course.
So far, the feedback I've been getting is that, I'm happy that I can now go into the kitchen and not be scared anymore, or I'm happy that you're giving me permission to sort of play around with it and do things that I've never done before. People are saying things like, oh my God, I made the lentils and chickpeas, and I'm sitting here eating them cold right now. I added some peanut butter when I was cooking and subbed out some vermouth for the vodka. Oh my God, okay, I feel better. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I'm getting on a regular basis.
Cool.
So, frankly, regardless of what the numbers are in terms of how many books are being sold, that's not important to me, as the fact that people are telling me I've never cooked this way before, and I'm so happy that I'm able to do it now because it's so easy.
Awesome. Well, the numbers actually aren't bad, and they're going to get better because AK Press just recently picked you up. So
that's very cool to know.
Yeah.
Does it come up on the AK Press website as well?
I don't think yet. They just got the books probably last week, so it'll come up soon.
Very, very cool. And
Yeah.
Animal from South Africa said that he has a animal rights organization, and they're going to start carrying it as well.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Yep. Very, very exciting stuff.
So, I don't think you should downplay the numbers. They're actually quite good.
I'm sure they are, but to me, that's not the measure of my success, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's good to hear.
Because if you remember from the beginning, I was like, I don't really want all the credit. I don't want all the recognition. It's more so that people get out there and start cooking that I want them to do. And what do you know? It's happening from the first day that the books went into people's hands. They're responding and saying, wow, this is wonderful, and having so much fun.
Cool. So what kind of questions and things are coming up?
One of the questions that I got recently is rather important, and it addresses the question of how you freeze stuff properly. The person in Jenny asked me, hi Dino, you've mentioned before that you don't buy canned beans. Instead, to save money, you buy dried beans and soak them and cook them. Do you ever make large batches and freeze them? Reason I ask is because I've started doing this. Each source I look at says a different answer for how long you can keep them in the freezer. For Easy Beans cookbook, it says 8 months. Another cookbook says 6, and now this online source says 2 to 3 months. Do you know how long you can store beans in the freezer for? P.S. My friend, for an early birthday present, gave me your cookbook. I just love it and made the quick garbanzo soup my favorite so far. 5.
All right.
There's a couple of different issues that we want to tackle. Number one being, there's 2 different types of freezers that you're probably going to see in your home. The first kind is the one that just comes with your refrigerator and freezer. It's just on the top or the bottom there or on the side. And you kind of use it on a regular basis. You throw things in there, you take stuff out, and you have your soy ice cream and your whatever in there, right? And you're using that on a regular basis. Now, if you're going to be using that to freeze your food, yes, definitely you don't want to keep them in there for more than 2 to 6 months, give or take, because you are opening and closing that door so much that the food is going to, melt a little tiny bit when you open it and then refreeze when you close it. So the shelf life is not going to be as long as what's called a deep freeze unit. These are these large units that are about the size of a regular refrigerator and freezer, and that's where you want to freeze things for long term. So say, for example, I make a giant pot of chili that's about, 5-6 kilos heavy, and I want to freeze enough of it for a year. I want to throw it into my larger freezer because I'm not going to be opening it on a regular basis. It's just going to sit there, do its thing, and the ice actually gets colder in there than it would in my regular freezer.
Cool.
Another thing to address is that not only do you have to worry about the size of the freezer, you also want to worry about the amount of water content that you have in your recipes. I've seen a lot of people freeze things with a lot of water in them, and that's really not a good idea just because, number one, you're taking up more space in your freezer, and it's going to take longer to freeze. But number two, it's going to reduce the shelf life because the more water you have in there, the more stuff you're going to have melting versus the solid matter you can keep there pretty much indefinitely. So say, for example, I make something like a beans or something. I want to drain off as much of the water as I humanly can and freeze the cooked beans by themselves without spicing them or anything. Then when I'm ready to have them, I take them out, I thaw them, and then I add the spices to them and eat them that way. Because the less water you have, the quicker it'll freeze, the longer it'll stay, and the better it's going to stay in that state.
Cool.
Yes. I hope everyone can keep this straight so far.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward, you would think, but I have seen people freezing things like stocks and soups and things like that, and that's fine. But what you want to do is make it double or triple strength and then freeze the concentrate and then rehydrate it when you take it out.
That
Good
makes a lot of
idea.
sense.
It's what I do every time because I grew up in a family of 6, and if you have these giant pots of stock sitting in your freezer, you're not exactly going to have freezer space anymore.
Good point.
Yeah.
So what else came up,
What else came up? That was about it. Oh, right, the curry leaves issue. Right. Thanks for that, Bob. I've been getting a lot of questions about the curry leaf issue as to where to find it, how to grow it, and all the rest of it. And I think it's wonderful that people want to try the stuff, the recipes, in their unadulterated form as much as possible. However, I must say that it's kind of disheartening to hear that people are so fixated on getting curry leaves, come hell or high water, because although it is nice to have, it is not a necessity in any of the recipes that we have in there. I cannot count how many times that we haven't had curry leaves at home. Sometimes I'm traveling, or say, for example, I just don't feel like going outside into the rain and picking curry leaves. I will cook without them because the food tastes perfectly fine. The spices are really what gives it that flavor, and the techniques are sort of what builds up that flavor, versus the curry leaves just give it sort of like a little extra something.
Like a depth.
Like a depth, but it's not necessary by any means at all. Say, for example, I'm making a pot of dal or something, and I don't have curry leaves. I don't bother with it. I just go about spicing my dishes I normally would, and it's going to taste fantastic. If I have it, I'll throw it in there as an option. So I think I may not have been very clear in the book when I said there's no substitute for curry leaves. That's absolutely true, but what that means is that if you can't find them, don't use them.
Right. But the other thing is that they're not really hard to get online, and once you get them, you can freeze them. I mean, they lose a little bit of the punch, but they're still pretty good when you freeze
They're
them.
still pretty good. They're actually even pretty decent dried, although I'm probably going to get some purists, running down my door, with a battering ram or something for saying this.
I wouldn't use them dried.
I know you wouldn't use them dried, but, sometimes when you're in a pinch, you do what you can.
Yeah, I know.
And personally, I wouldn't use them. I just leave it out completely. But say, I went up to Steve's house in the south suburbs of Chicago, and they don't have curry leaves nearby, or what they do have is freaking expensive. I took up a large paper bag full of curry leaves the first time I went to visit him, and I told him to just dry them, if he's going to be using them long term, because I didn't know that he was moving down here. And what do you know, they worked out just fine. It wasn't going to be that same level of depth of flavor, but it'll get you by.
Cool. Actually, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I've seen some recipes, South Indian cooking, and that call for coconut, and it's often just like dried coconut, and we sometimes don't have that around the house or don't want to use it or whatever. Can you still make the South Asian recipes without
yes,
the
you
coconut?
can, because what happens is that there's a particular region of India called Kerala, and they put coconut in pretty damn near everything, I would have to say. It's wonderful food, don't get me wrong. I love Keralite food. I have a few recipes in the book, and whenever I eat there, I'm just in heaven because there's so freaking much coconut. It's not just the coconut milk, it's the coconut juice, it's the grated coconut, all the rest of it. Technically, if you can't get dried coconut or fresh coconut, do it without. But see if you can add some like coconut milk or some nuts to replace out that fat, if you know what I mean.
Oh, so you could use ground nuts?
You could use it's not ideal, but it'll give you that same mouthfeel in your mouth. So say, for example, you're not going to do this something in like a coconut sauce or something where you just grind up the coconut